Spideera here, and this is a ranking review for Bed Friends. Yeah, so Bed Friends is a love story between two co-workers. Now, these are two guys that, for the most part, they don't get along. One is a known player, and the other is a pretty boy. The pretty boy is pretty serious. He seldom smiles. He's all business kind of. But after a drunken night from an office party, it leads to them crossing the sex line, and they begin that arduous task of navigating sex, family, life, work, and an almost non-existent friendship. So, to begin, this one does actually rank as a 10, and a high 10 at that, believe it or not, and over the moon. Why? Because they have some of the best sex scenes that I've seen in a relatively censored show. Now, I believe there's probably another version of this show that is uncensored. I'm not 100% positive on that, but I would guess there would be, because although the sex scenes in this particular show are good, it kind of gives me the feeling that there's more to see. You're just not going to see it here, if you know what I mean. One of the best parts about it is the fact that there's just enough but not too much in the very first episode. So it's not one of those where they give you a big eye full of whammy on episode 1 and then there's no more throughout the show. They're not quite that mean about it. So you're going to get some sprinkled out, sprinkled throughout. They do a pretty good job overall. Could they do more? Yes, that's why I think there's another version out here somewhere. I'm not going to go look for it though. At least not now, maybe later. But nonetheless, getting back to the point. So why else is this a 10? The main character is clearly gay. But he's not the over-the-top flamboyant gay. He's the super cute, very pretty twink. And, for those of you who don't know the terminology, a twink is kind of like a person who appears to be like in their early or mid-20s. And they're cute, like guys who might wear a little bit of makeup, not enough to look like a drag queen, but, just enough to look almost pretty. And they're cute, okay? So that's terminology that's used among the real life guys who live that lifestyle. It's not something that you're probably going to hear too many people outside the lifestyle using. But I'm using that word to let you know that's the portrayal. That's what this character is supposed to be. Now, a weird side note though, the characters in this show seem to grow younger as the show progresses. Like by the last episode, they almost look like teenagers. I don't know why. That's just an opinion. Now, the story does start out with a bang, and then it keeps its momentum for a while, but it does start to fizzle towards the end, but not like where the story fizzles and becomes bad. It just slows down. But the story itself, even the ending, the whole thing, in my opinion, is well done. It's really good. Each episode makes you really want to watch the next episode. And the actors are really, really cute. I don't know where they found these guys from, but the one I referenced as a twink is like, he's almost androgynous, and on the feminine side of androgyny. And then the other one is like dark and sexy. So the contrast of them together is like really nice. They did a great job. Even like, putting the ages together. Like, I don't know who's older than whom, because that's not really implied in the film. But the way that they behave and the way they interact with each other, they seem to be very close, at the same level in life, as it were. It's not like one is super smart and the other one's super dumb or something. They do a really good job with the pairing and, the matching. And I hope to see these two in other films, because I have a feeling that even though the chemistry that was in this one is kind of cat and mousey, I have a feeling that if these two were in like a really hardcore film, and no, I'm not talking porn, I mean one where they have a real defined we hate each other kind of, portrayal, I think they would make an excellent team to play that kind of role. They just give off that vibe of, I swear if I weren't being paid for this, I would punch you in your face. I know. That's just my imagination, but that's just the vibe they give me. Now, overall, the production quality is great. This is a bit more on the romantic side. So even though there's a lot of sex sprinkled in, it's not yaoi style sex. It's kind of like, it's borderline hetero. Like if it weren't for the fact that you knew these were two guys, you could almost think that it was a scene between a male and a female. It's got that kind of vibe to it. The story is just long enough to be enjoyable, not so long that it becomes irritating. And for those of you who are like the kind of movie critiquers, there's only a few little oops moments that I noticed that were so obvious I could not notice. Things like, they get out of the car, but they forget to get wallets, bags, keys, and so forth. Or like a scene where he just finishes buttoning up his shirt, and in the next scene, the shirt is open again. There's a few little things like that. So I'm guessing the editing team was more concerned about hair and makeup than they were little things that audiences would notice. So just a sidebar. So, will you like it? More than likely. This is one of those shows that it doesn't really have a lot of unlikable parts to it. The first few eps are pretty steamy with the sex scenes, but they are kind of squashed together. So it can be kind of, where you're trying to figure out, okay, is this the same night? Is this a different, what is this? So technically you could kind of skip that if that's not your cup of tea, and you'd still get the gist of the story. Now, me personally, I like the sex scenes. I think they really should have had more, which is why I said I think there might be another version of this. Because, it's called Bed Friends, and so you're kind of expecting more bed scenes, just saying. Now, the downside is it's very emotional. Now, that does not mean that you won't like it, because if you like emotional films, then that's fine. But it deals with a lot of touchy subject matter that some may find triggering, that has to deal with like childhood and, family matters, things like that. So this is one of those where I'd say just tread with caution. Like if you're a person who is easily triggered by childhood trauma and stuff like that, there is some foreshadowing. So you'll know that, that it's in there. So they do kind of give you a tiny bit of a heads up before you get to the parts where you may, as I say, you might feel some type of way. If you notice that there's any foreshadowing towards what I'm going to label as more or less like abuse, that type of thing, if that's going to bother you, then just exit out of that one. And if you go to the next episode, you should be fine. Now, for the reasons that you'll really like it, at least in my opinion, there's a lot of drama, but the drama is really realistic. Like, a lot of these shows, they tend to go so far to the left that there's a point where you're kind of like, yeah, that wouldn't happen. This show stays on point to such a degree that it really does draw you into the story, because it's stuff that really can happen, like every single thing. And it's weird because it's usually the kind of things that happen to women, but it's happening to a guy. And his response to it is, it's borderline. In some cases, he responds the way a guy would, and in other cases, he responds the way any person would who's really just been thrown off their game and they don't know what the hell to do. The only weird thing is, it seems as though the story itself alludes to the fact that some of these things happen to him on a regular basis. So you would think at some point he would say, hey, maybe I should take karate, or he never does that. So, like I said, that can be a plus or a negative. It depends on what kind of story you like. If you're looking for the really good, the main character revenge type, then yeah, you're not going to quite get that. But if you like a good revenge, even if it comes from another source, then you'll probably get that. So, just saying, it's a really good, well-balanced film. The other thing is the main character balances out, the secondary main character rather, he balances out the first character so well in that he is very down to earth. He thinks things through and he behaves like, well, like a grown ass man. You know, he doesn't overstep. He takes his time. He gets shit done. He's rational. He's not overly emotional. You know, he's the kind of guy that almost every chick would fall for. And they don't really imply it, but it sounds like he is portrayed as being bisexual. And the mere fact that he eventually really falls hard for the, the twink it's adorable. It's a nice quality twist that you don't get in a lot of these shows, because it's a realistic love story. It's not one of those, where the guys are sitting around contemplating how they feel for, the first 10 episodes. These guys are pretty much solid in that, they know what they want, they're going for what they want, and they behave like men. I mean, how can I say? Even the cutie pie, who's, could kind of look either way. If you zoom in on his face, you really wouldn't know if he was a girl or a guy. And even with that, he still behaves in such a way that, you're still getting the guy vibe off of him. So it's not like you're watching one of those films where you're going, hi, the whole way through. It's very well done. It really is. Okay, now, as much as I've carried on about how much I like the film, and I do like the film, this is not one that I'd watch over and over again. So I want to make that clear because I don't want you to think this is one of those, one for the books, I need my own personal copy. So it might sound weird, but given the title and the direction the story alludes to, the sex scenes should have progressed more. Like, yes, there is sex, but it's kind of like, and it's not that they're doing the same thing, it's that it doesn't really go to the next level. Like, anybody who's been in a long-term relationship in which sex is involved, you have layers to it. You might start with things that are going on above the neck, and then next time you meet up, you're leaving marks on your chest or whatever, and then you work your way down and back up until you've now progressed to a point where you now know what the other party likes. So either you guys are into, food play or foot play or, role play, or you're dressing up or you're putting on animal, you're doing something. This one doesn't really go to that extent in a realistic way, even though the story itself is very realistic. So in that regard, do they throw in a few scenes that, will make you kind of, haha, that was funny. Or, some people might think it's hot. Some of it I think is funny. It was supposed to be hot, but it didn't quite resonate on the wow, that's hot scale for me. But I'm not saying that won't resonate that way for you. I'm just saying that was my opinion. So I do believe that some of that, it needed something. Now, again, I've got to go on and say that chances are there's an uncensored version that fills in the blanks. And if there is, that would probably be one that I'd watch over and over again. Only because without those little segments that needed to be in this version that I did see, that's why it doesn't have the staying power. Because it's too spotty. You've got a great story. It's very realistic. But the part that needs to show the development between the characters, that part's not there. The sexual part. The story part, the character development is great. The show is not boring. They do a very good job. They keep it going well. They pull you in. They make you feel for the character. They make you like the character. They really make you like the other guy, because I swear this is almost one of those damsels in distress, hero saves the day, but the hero has to tread lightly so the damsel doesn't, punch him in the eye type story. So it's a really good balance. I give them a complete 100% thumbs up on that. Now, is there anything that you really need to know? A few things. One, there's about 10 episodes that are about an hour long. It's fast paced, so it doesn't really feel like it's that long, to be honest. There's not a lot of downtime. This isn't one where you're going to walk away from it and still know what's going on if you skip 2 episodes. You need to watch all the episodes. The first 3 episodes are definitely not safe for work and would be considered rated R, even in the one that's listed in this playlist. Now, there are some portrayals of what I refer to as caricatures. So it's not a lot. So it's not to the point of annoyance, but just a heads up that it is in there. So if that kind of thing offends you, be advised it's there. The other thing is there are a few slight potential trigger warnings. They do a great job of giving this guy's backstory, but in so doing, there's a lot of alluding to things that some people may find a bit offensive or annoying. And what I mean by that is, although they don't really go overboard in their explanation of any of this, it does give off that he grew up to be gay because he was molested kind of vibe, even though it's not exactly implied, it's alluded to. And I know for me anyway, I find the excuses as to why we're gay storylines to be a tad bit off-putting for me. This one, it didn't bother me as much because, like I said, it's not put in the story in such a way that they try to make it sound like if it weren't for that one incident, this guy would have been normal. And they don't do that. So that's why I can still give it a perfect 10 and say that, yeah, they do a great job. So even though they imply some things, I like to look at it as the other parts of the backstory make more sense regarding, the negative events that happen, kind of roll over and explain the other negative events that happen that made him be who he is as an adult. But it's not that it made him gay. It made him have the personality he has, if that makes sense. The backstory is not, it's not one that everyone can just handle just on its face and watch it and move on. If you have, like childhood trauma of any kind, this might be a story that you want to kind of, move away from. If it, that's pretty much all I can say with that part, because it's not like it's bad. It's just, it is in there. So that's kind of a warning. Let's see. Yeah, I was trying to think if there was anything of relevance that I need to explain other than that. Yeah, I think that's the only real trigger warning and the only thing that you really like that you should have a heads up on. And I do believe that before you get to certain episodes, they do give you the consent button to make sure you know that you're going to see something that might not set well. So it doesn't sneak up on you. I'll put it that way. They do enough foreshadowing that at least that portion, they don't sneak up on you. There are other things that do sneak up on you that do not require your consent. All of it still goes back to childhood. That's why I'm saying if you have childhood trauma, this one you might want to avoid. Unless you've dealt with it and you're okay with it, then you'll just love this movie as much, or this series as much as I did. So I think that's about it. The rest of it, they really did an excellent job. Even with the backstory and explaining their trauma, they did an excellent job. It's just, like I said, it just depends. So yeah, they did. The storytelling here it's superior in a way. I mean, it's better than what I've seen in a lot of these fictions, because it is a fictitious story, but there's so much of it that they keep so real that all I can say is, like, hats off for this one. Super props to the people who put it together. They really, they really hit this one, I think, out of the park. Like I said, it's worth a watch. It's just not something that I would watch over and over again, I guess, would be the best way of putting it. Alrighty, so that pretty much concludes this particular presentation. As far as I'm concerned, this is one that's worth watching, and I hope you feel the same way. If you do or don't, comment below and let people know how you feel after watching it. Because after all, your opinion might not match mine. And this is, we're trying to make a community here so that everybody can tell each other what you think. And then all of us who love BL can share the love and not get stuck watching, craptastic shit that doesn't appeal to any of us. So anyway, well, if you like it, you'll love it. And if you don't, you won't. This is Spideera, and I'm signing off. I'll see you on the next one.